made it amply clear that
Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's dive into the top headlines this hour. President Trump says he will tell European leaders at Davos that the US has to have Greenland for global security. EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen calls his tariff threats a mistake and vows a united response. The UK government approves plans for China to build a large embassy in central London. The move draws criticism from residents and rights groups despite official planning consent. Dozens of ISIS fighters escaped prison during heavy clashes between Syrian forces and Kurdish-led fighters. Negotiations between Damascus and the SDF collapse as government troops advanced east. Ukraine's Chernobyl nuclear plant loses all off-site power after widespread military activity. The IAEA says key substations and power lines critical to nuclear safety are affected. Israeli bulldozers begin demolishing structures at UNRWA's East Jerusalem headquarters. Israel says the site has no legal immunity, while UNRWA calls it an unprecedented attack. Russia launches a drone and missile strike on Kyiv, cutting heating to over 5,600 apartment buildings in freezing weather. One person is killed, another wounded, as critical infrastructure suffers further damage. Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev says he has arrived in Davos for the World Economic Forum. The summit includes US and Ukrainian delegations as diplomatic talks continue to end the war in Ukraine. Netflix submits an all-cash $82.7 billion offer for Warner Bros. Discovery's studio and streaming assets. The bid has full board support and seeks to block a rival move by Paramount. We move now to our top story of the hour, and NATO's Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Lieutenant General Alexis Granikowicz, says that the Greenland issue is now a political one. According to him, at the military level, NATO is focused on defending and deterring aggression against any part of the alliance's territory, and they are ready to defend every inch of it. This comes as US President Donald Trump has repeatedly insisted he will settle for nothing less than ownership of Greenland. However, leaders of both Denmark and Greenland have said the island is not for sale and does not want to be a part of the United States. Trump has also announced tariffs on imports from European allies that oppose the United States taking over Greenland, an autonomous part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Meanwhile, European countries say this would violate a trade deal reached with Trump last year, and EU leaders are set to discuss possible retaliation at an emergency summit in Brussels on January the 22nd. Let's listen in to what NATO's Supreme Allied Commander had to say on the issue.
The Greenland issue is a political issue at this point. In our military levels, we're focused on what we always focus on across the alliance, and that's defending and deterring aggression against any part of fellow alliance territory. We're ready to defend every inch of it. Following the chief of defense, so I process every chief of defense regularly, and there's no change to our mission or what we're accomplishing as a military law.
Andrew Latham joins us now. He's an international affairs expert. He joins us live from Minneapolis. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us, first of all. The communication here getting a little muddy. Of course, one could forget that the United States is part of NATO with these statements. These comments by the Supreme Allied Commander that have been made, that NATO is focused on defending and deterring aggression against any part of the alliance's territory, and they are ready to defend any inch of it. Is that either talking to the United States or playing to the narrative that Donald Trump has put forward that Russia and China threaten the security of the island?
Well, I think it's a matter of lots of good cops and one bad cop. That particular game is being played. If you listen to President Trump, and he always makes comments like this in the run-up to big summits like Davos, for example, there's, we're not going to compromise. We're going to either purchase it or annex it by force, Greenland by force, whatever the case may be. But all the people around him, the serious folks, Scott Bessent, Marco Rubio, the NATO Supreme Commander, are all making very different noises, which is the threat is posed not by the United States, it's posed by Russia and China. NATO, including the United States, will do its level best to secure all of NATO territory, and everybody needs to dial down the rhetoric. And once upon a time, the Arctic was a zone of peace after the Cold War, cooperation on science and resource development, and that era is gone now. We're back into great power competition, Russia, China, the US, etc. And once that happens, then the burden sharing issue comes up, and that's a legitimate issue that's been on the table for a long time. What are the Europeans contributing versus what does the United States contribute to collective defense? And unfortunately, President Trump's rhetoric and the rhetoric around it, both anti and pro-Trump, has really escalated out of control. This is a rhetorical battle, not really a serious political conflict. And the good cops around Trump are trying to make that case. But the bad cop keeps tweeting and otherwise making comments that add fuel to the fire. And the Europeans, to their, I think, discredit, are also now simply adding fuel to the fire, all of which is being greeted with glee in Moscow and Beijing.
Exactly. And of course, Donald Trump has said repeatedly that and that he won't settle for nothing less than ownership of the island. Now, the Danes don't want that. The people of Greenland don't want that. Why isn't he open to cooperation, whether it would be more military bases on Greenland, if national security here truly is the issue?
Yes, I mean, if national security is the issue, then you can expand the U.S. base signature on the island. That's a guaranteed right under the Treaty of 1951. You can get the Europeans to do more, and I don't mean just send one British soldier and half a dozen French soldiers. I mean, take it seriously, naval, air, space, cyber, and ground. And that would, in fact, enhance NATO security, and it would enhance North American security, and it would enhance American security. That would be a logical way to go. But Trump, of course, is approaching this in terms of leverage. And the way he does his deals is he puts a maximal case on the table, whether it's tariffs or whether it's invasion or whether it's lots of money being lashed out. And then over time, he backs down. He dials it back. He steps backward. And often he gets a deal, not always, but often he gets a deal. And I think that's where we are now. It has to be said, too, that in terms of leverage, the Supreme Court in the United States is likely to take his tariff power away from him in the next little while. And in November, he's likely to lose. The Republicans are going to lose control of the House and the Senate, maybe, in which case the single party rule that he's enjoying right now, Republican majorities in the House and Senate, plus in the White House, all of that's going to go away. And I think he senses that the clock is ticking, that he has only a limited amount of time to get what he wants. And he's really, really dialed up the rhetoric to use what leverage he still has to get what he wants, which I think at the end of the day is not another 51st state. It's an enhanced NATO security presence in the Arctic.
I don't know if you saw Donald Trump's Truth Social post today, Andrew. Of course, it was an edited image of a group of European leaders sat in the Oval Office from a coalition of the willing meet. It showed a Western Hemisphere map with the American flag covering both Canada, Greenland, and Venezuela. Now, a lot of critics have said this comes down to nothing but Donald Trump wanting to control that hemisphere even further, let alone that Northern American continent. Do you think there's any weight in that?
I think there is. I think that's his vision, is that the Western Hemisphere, not just America and Latin America, but now what used to be called British North America, Canada, and of course the Danish colony of Greenland, He wants all of that to be considered part of the Western Hemisphere and that to be the focus of American security. It's about modalities here. It's not about, it shouldn't be about conquest, even if the rhetoric is. It should be about, to put it politely, I suppose, coercion. Getting Canada to do what the United States wants. Canada's already stepping up in terms of probably buying into the Golden Dome missile defense system. Certainly, under Prime Minister Carney, reinvigorating Canada's Arctic defenses, Arctic over-the-horizon radar, for example, things like that. And now he wants the Europeans, the Danes, but also the European members of NATO, to do the same with Greenland. So it's about securing North America, as he now sees it, from the North Pole to the South Pole, basically. And the leverage is one of conquest and annexation and 51st states. How many 51st states could there be, by the way? But at the end of the day, backing down and simply using this as leverage to get what he wants, which is Canada stepping up and the Europeans stepping up and the Russians and the Chinese stepping out of places like Venezuela and possibly Cuba.
Yes, Andrew Latham, do stay with us as we move on to a related development coming up next. And US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has strongly rejected the idea that European countries would retaliate against the US by dumping American debt over the Greenland dispute. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Bessent called the narrative false and said it defies logic. He urged countries to pause and not escalate tensions with the United States, stressing that such a move would only harm global stability. Bessent also pointed out that US Treasury bonds remain the most liquid market globally, with Europe continuing to hold them. He warned that escalating trade wars like the one seen with China would be disastrous for everyone. He further emphasized that European nations should stick with existing trade agreements, which provide much needed certainty in these uncertain times. As global markets reacted to the heightened tensions, Bessent urged calm and patience to let the situation play out. Let's listen in to the Treasury Secretary.
And what I'm urging everyone here to do is sit back, take a deep breath, and let things play out. As I said on April 2nd, the worst thing countries can do is escalate against the United States. And as far as your question about the additional tariffs, what President Trump is threatening on Greenland is very different than the other trade deals. So I would urge all countries to stick with their trade deals. We have agreed on them, and it does provide great certainty. We are in the middle of the President Trump's policies, and of course, Europe is an ally. The U.S.'s NATO membership is unquestioned. We are partners in trying to stop this tragic war between Russia and Ukraine. But that does not mean that we cannot have disagreements on the future of Greenland.
Andrew, Scott Bessent there trying to urge calm between European allies and others alike. How difficult of a job do you think that would be when the president, of course, is imposing tariffs or threatening to impose tariffs on some of the United States' closest allies and NATO partners? Do you think people will be listening to Scott Bessent and in fact restraining from taking further action against the United States after these actions?
Well, I think that's a good example of the good cop, bad cop routine. President Trump running around playing the bad cop, threats and all sorts of noises that sound like threats. And people like Scott Bessent saying, "Hey, everybody, calm down. We have these arrangements. They work for us. Let's not mess with them." He's also right in terms of this: that the Europeans don't hold U.S. treasuries because they're doing the U.S. a favor. They hold them because they're the most liquid and stable and safe currencies, instruments out there. And the U.S. Treasury market is very robust. If the Europeans were to dump these, the Americans could absorb it easily. The European economy would be in serious trouble. So Scott Bessent is right about that. He's right about the importance of dialing things down, and he's also sort of sotto voce in a whispered voice, he's kind of hinting at the fact that, you know, it's not just President Trump who likes to bloviate and exaggerate and go over the top. The European leaders, especially Ursula von der Leyen, who has her own agenda in terms of Europeanizing everything, are also given to these excesses, these rhetorical excesses. So he's a voice of calm, as is Marco Rubio and the NATO commanding officer. We're going to get over this period of turbulence, and at the end of that, I think what we're likely to end up with is a more secure Greenland and a more robust North Atlantic relationship and a more secure and perhaps satisfied Donald Trump.
Andrew Latham, as always, it is a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for taking the time in joining us here on the channel. We have some breaking news coming out of the World Economic Forum once again. And in Davos, the French President Emmanuel Macron made sharp remarks regarding the growing tensions between the United States and its allies. Speaking candidly about the looming possibility of economic confrontations, Macron warned that Europe might be forced to use the anti-coercion instrument against the US, a tool designed to counter economic pressures. Macron emphasized the absurdity of threatening allies with tariffs, especially in the light of the strong partnerships that exist between the nations. He remarked that such an approach does not align with the principles of mutual respect and cooperation, urging the US to avoid using coercion as a diplomatic tool. He concluded, "We prefer respect over bullies," a statement that underscores Europe's desire for fair and respectful negotiations in global trade and diplomacy. Of course, this comes as Donald Trump is threatening tariffs upon European partners. A 10% coming into effect on February the 1st. 8 nations affected: the United Kingdom, France, Norway, Finland, Germany, and others. Of course, this will follow with a 25% tariff on the 1st of June if the European countries in question don't adhere to Donald Trump's Greenland policy, from which he wants to either buy or annex the island by force. Of course, he hasn't specified about his action when it comes to the island. However, it is certain that he does indeed desire it to become a full part of the United States, something which both Denmark and the Greenlandic people categorically reject. Okay. Of course, this is some strong words by the French President Emmanuel Macron. He has been criticized by Donald Trump because of his words when it comes to this issue. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us once again at such short notice. This speech by Macron at the World Economic Forum, he is using pretty harsh words towards Donald Trump and his administration when it comes to the tariffs. He's calling the United States bullies, saying that they prefer respect over the method that the United States is showing. And also, of course, warned of the usage of this anti-coercion instrument that the EU has in its inventory. What more can you tell us about the stance which Macron is taking and the anti-coercion instrument that he's talking about?
Well, the anti-coercion instrument, first of all, hasn't been used, to my knowledge, ever before, and it's really about if an American firm wants to put in a bid for a contract in Europe for a variety of different services, including, by the way, social media and information technology, and that the Europeans can block that. Right now, the U.S. has a huge surplus with the Europeans, so that could hurt certain American interests that have the American president's ear as well. Beyond that, though, Macron is of a piece with von der Leyen in this respect. They have an agenda, political agenda, and that is to attenuate to some extent the transatlantic dimension of their security and focus on Europeanizing that in the context of European NATO, in the context of the European Union. And the idea there, as Macron often says, is strategic autonomy, that France, leading a more independent European Union, would be pursuing its own security and not have to kowtow, as it were, to the Americans, not have to genuflect in the direction of Washington. And von der Leyen obviously has an interest in that as well, in terms of building the European Union into something it was never intended to be, which is a European NATO. That's not in its DNA, but that certainly is where she and Macron would like it to go. So it's not surprising that they have both seized on this opportunity to advance their own particular political agenda. Will it go anywhere? I doubt it. The Europeans aren't up to it at the moment, and it will be decades before they really are. Whether they like it or not, they are joined at the hip with the United States and Canada and North America, and they need to make the best of that. And this kind of rhetoric, whether it comes from Paris or Brussels or Washington or Ottawa for that matter, is unhelpful and counterproductive in terms of their security interests.
Andrew Latham, once again, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme, as always. We now move on, and Canada's Foreign Minister Anita Anand confirmed the country's refusal to pay $1 billion for a permanent seat on US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. The initiative, originally meant to oversee the rebuilding of Gaza, has invited multiple countries to join, including Israel and Ukraine. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also confirmed receiving the invitation, but expressed his hesitation to work alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin on such a board. He stated it was hard to imagine working with Russia in any capacity at this time. Meanwhile, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar reaffirmed Israel's support for Trump's Gaza plan, emphasizing the need for Hamas's disarmament and the demilitarization of Gaza for the plan's successful implementation. Let's hear what the leaders had to say.
Plan in Gaza. In order for it to be implemented, Hamas must be disarmed and Gaza must be demilitarized. This is necessary for both Israel's security and a better future for Gaza. It is critical to dismantle the terror states in the Middle East, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthis in Yemen. Without doing so, there will be no regional stability.
Nous examinons les documents maintenant. Peut-être je pourrais mentionner les principes, les valeurs canadiennes. Nous sommes à table comme un pays qui croit fermement dans les règles internationales, comme le principe d'intégrité territoriale. Donc, ce sont des principes maintenant qui sont là dans la fondation de notre politique étrangère et nous examinons la situation, mais nous n'allons pas payer le $1 milliard.
Major General Sudhakar G joins us now. He is a senior strategic and international affairs expert, joining us live from Jaipur. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, Donald Trump's international Board of Peace is raising questions among many international actors. Of course, the $1 billion fee which a member has to pay raises concerns, as does Donald Trump's lifetime chair role. Of course, also analysts are saying that this might undermine the United Nations. Canada has refused, not straight out to join, but to pay the $1 billion. And Donald Trump has even threatened a 200% tariff on France if it does not join. What are your thoughts on how this might play out? Of course, things are quite muddy right now.
Good evening, Thomas. Thank you for inviting me for your show. A very critical issue you have raised in the question. It's highly laughable. It's ridiculous in the international rules-based international order. And in my opinion, this initiative taken by Donald Trump, it has actually widened the horizon. And if you want to achieve something, I quite admire his focused approach so far to bring about peace or start with ceasefire in both the Eastern Europe as also Middle East, but expanding the horizon or the spectrum of multiple stakeholders. It will complicate the issue, it will delay the issue. I don't see the light which was visible at the end of the tunnel will ever be seen by anyone from the global geopolitical churn that one is going through. So having said that, let me also bring about a couple of issues. First and foremost thing, let me underscore the point, the United Nations has always been sidelined. It has always been sidelined. In the instant case, it is being glorified. So, and so much so that the relevance of United Nations has been actually junked. It doesn't have any role and responsibility in the instant case. Is Donald Trump trying to create a separate architecture away from the transatlantic architecture based on which the global apex organizations such as United Nations General Assembly, Security Council, they have been established, and good, bad, ugly, something is better than nothing. They have been actually negotiating or trying to navigate very complex issues in the global dynamics. So therefore, to start a new process means that it has to take roots, it has to get entrenched, and thereafter it has to grow. It has to grow like a tree. That is going to take anybody's guess time. It could be a lifetime journey, which Donald Trump may not be surviving to actually witness. So therefore, I don't want to be a pessimist. Like I said, that whatever steps he's taking, he must have thought through, his advisors must have applied themselves. But I see a roadmap fraught with enhanced obstacles and resistance and polarized responses. And I would say what is happening with the France or the European Union or the European countries is also relevant to other countries as well. Like India has been invited with Pakistan. Will ever India like that kind of a stance? India is not going to be equated as an equal partner or equal neighbor with that of Pakistan. This is one thing which India has been trying to stay away from. So similarly, when you talk about Zelensky and Russia, obviously Zelensky is right when he says, whatever for, why should he share the table with the man against whom he has been fighting for so long? So similar issues will come up. Therefore, to sum it up in this part of your question, I would say he is applying a strategy of business over the conflict. Strategy of business over conflict.
Apologies for the interruption. Of course, we don't know anything about the structure of how this is going to work yet. A $1 billion fee is being demanded. People like Vladimir Putin have been invited, Benjamin Netanyahu, Zelensky, among other countries. This structure of Donald Trump being a lifetime chair on the board of peace, does that make anything sense? Does that have any longevity to it?
No way, it doesn't make any sense. You see, if you start with a thing like a structure, like you were talking about the structure, as per Donald Trump, there is a structure existing. It's a 3-layered structure, and the lowest layer has got the Palestinians who will have no say. In the top layer, they have, he's the chair himself. Tony Blair is there at the head of the complete organization. So it's kind of a very, very, I would say, ambiguous, a blurred kind of an organization now. It is yet to crystallize and take shape. So this way, it is going to take a very long time. And also, introducing a system of $1 billion fee to be paid by the member to be part of this 60 member countries, and I think the list is also ever increasing, is not going to augur well. It is not going to take the entire process of peacemaking to anywhere, because the root problem is not being addressed. The root problem is, will Hamas disarm or lay down their arms? I don't think so. Hamas will never, over their dead body, they will, disarm themselves, because it is a
Major General G, I'm so sorry to interrupt. We do have to move on, but of course we could talk about this for ages. But do stay with us as we move on to our next story. And the UK government has approved plans for a massive Chinese embassy in London, located at Royal Mint Court near the Tower of London. The decision, which follows years of debate over national security risks, has sparked strong opposition. Critics, including Shadow Communities Secretary James Cleverly and the Liberal Democrats, have called it a significant misstep. The government, however, assures that intelligence agencies were involved throughout the process to address security concerns. This approval comes shortly after Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney strengthened ties with China, signing new trade deals amid Canada's desire to diversify its economic relationships away from US dependence. Meanwhile, Europe faces a complex relationship with China, balancing strategic de-risking and competition with ongoing cooperation, especially in sectors like green technology and addressing global issues like the Ukraine conflict. Major General Sadakaji joins us once again on this brand new development coming out of the United Kingdom. Of course, the relationship with China and the UK and Europe in general, to be honest, is quite complicated. Of course, balancing its relationship with China as a global manufacturing and trading superpower as opposed to a national security risk, where many people in the United Kingdom have said that and are fearful of espionage being carried out, and there was blacked out security plans when these were initially released, and China were being reluctant in sharing what was actually going to be in central London. What do you think of this development? Do you think the United Kingdom has made the right decision here by allowing a mega embassy in the centre of its capital?
Certainly not. Certainly not. This is not the right decision by UK. Within UK itself, there is so much of opposition. For past 8 long years, they have been contesting the issue, and they're adopting of late the new stance, and the strategy which UK is adopting is to cooperate, compete and contest. Now, cooperation, competing and thereafter contesting or challenging is a very difficult, it's a tall order to actually, firstly they should do is to contain China. This is no way of containing China. You are welcoming China into the heartland of London, one. Number two, they also have been subjected to intense cyber attack from time to time. They have been penetrated. The spies are operating there. The people of United Kingdom are being kept under effective surveillance by very discreet and effective means, and a network of surveillance architecture. And most important thing is the system within United Kingdom. Talk about the trade, talk about the commercial activities, and day-to-day routine administration also has been deeply penetrated by China, so as to influence the people and people who are able to carry out influence in the society. So therefore, UK at the moment, as I see, does not have any other option but to get going ahead, because ultimately at the end of the day, what matters is a stable political party, a stable economy, no price rise, and the livelihood of the common people is not affected. That can happen only if their dependency, which has already been established over past 30 to 40 years with China, it continues to regulate and come into UK and be assimilated into the system. Because without China today, why only UK? All the countries in Europe, including America and other countries in the world, the dependency on China has grown so enormously that it's very difficult to talk about de-risking and diversification, let alone containment and compete and contest.
Yes, Major General Sadakaji, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the programme. Well, unfortunately, that is all that we have time for this hour, but keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.